Without the contribution of hunters for creating habitat and wildlife managed areas like this, the opportunity for hunting an African lion would never exist.
So Teenie, we just went through basically an old cattle ranch that you are going to convert back into a hunting. Just give me a little bit of insight what it takes to do that.
Cattle ranching used to be one of the biggest industries in the country. And here in the Limpopo Valley area of South Africa, thousands and thousands of acres has been reconverted into conservation land. Land where we can hunt, land where we can sustainably utilize something like the African lion like you have hunted this past week. And it's a tremendous effort to reconvert land into conservation. You have to get rid of all the old cattle fences. You have to get rid of old buildings, putting in wells. You know, without the hunter's dollar, we could not put in wells. Without the hunter's dollar, we could not relocate and re-establish land for conservation purposes. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of money to take off all the old cattle fences and re-establish this land to be wild as well as we can possibly get it in today's terms, and relocate animals like lions and sable and buffalo to be free roaming in order to give people an opportunity to hunt it again. The land can only sustain so many head of cattle, and prices of cattle went down, so people would put more cattle on their land, and the effect of that is you're destroying the habitat.
So in a case like this, in this farmland and this cattle, say a farmer, how many employees would he hire?
On average, a cattle rancher would have in the region of 100 to 250 head of cattle, and he can manage to do it with 1 to 2 employees.
Yeah, so we looked at thousands and thousands of acres that you've restored back from farmland onto hunting lands. How many people do you employ?
Well, on average in the hunting season we run about 30 employees, and it goes up because once we start to convert this land back into conservation land, we'll take about another 30 guys in as casual helpers in order to take these fences off and break down some of the buildings and so on and restore this into conservation land.
We visited communities, we visited schools. Would a farmer go back into the schools and help feed the kids and feed going into the high schools and doing the same thing? Would they do that?
You know, I think that is the contribution that hunters are bringing to the country. They bring foreign currency. The South African rand is not that strong, and people in the cattle business are finding it tough to survive. So the contribution that hunters are bringing is the reason and the fact that enables us to give back.
Exactly, giving back. That's the big thing right there. And again, the ripple effect. 2 employees versus 30 to 50 employees. The ripple effect on that from feeding their families, I mean, it just keeps going out. You know, same thing as you're back home. If we was to release lions like you just saw back into this farming community, how long do you think it would be before the farmer would destroy the lions? So it's nice to sit there and say, we're going to turn lions back again into the free range, but you have to find a suitable habitat, not only where they can't survive with cattle and they can't survive with people. That's one of the hardest things to do today is release lions back into the wild. Everybody wants to, well, let's release lions into the wild, but that's harder than it sounds.
Yeah, people has got a misperception on what's going on in Africa. Africa is also a developing country with more and more people, more need of food and less habitat for all this wildlife. So it's very idealistic to think that we can release 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 lions into an area. But what we got to determine is what was the first impact, what was the first reason for that area to be in need? What is the first reason for there not to be any lions? And that is the conflict between humans and animals. You can think for yourself, if there was lions with this cattle here, it would be in conflict with a poor farmer. This poor farmer might have 100 head of cattle. If he loses 10 or 20 of cattle to lions, that would devastate it.
Yeah, it's no different than the grizzly bear back in the States, you know. It wasn't the hunters that hunted them out, it was loss of habitat. Same thing.
What should never be taken out of sight is the fact that everybody has got to make a living somewhere or another, and if it's not funded by money, real money, you cannot have any kind of business. This guy found his life and living in cattle, and it used to be the main business in the area. But vegetation and droughts caused a lot of them to go out of business. You can only sustain a certain amount of cattle on a huge tract of land, but you can do about double or triple that with wildlife,
Yeah.
because they are way more selective in what they are eating and they in different vegetation, and they are doing much better than cattle in the Limpopo Valley area.
There you go. Hunters and conservation working together. That's a success all by itself right there.